In the late 80s, Atari was preparing to release a new lineup of consoles, all named after various jungle cats. The aim was to have a roadmap for hardware development, so that Atari could keep up with the likes of Nintendo and compete with their consoles over multiple upcoming generations. The plan started out okay, with the Lynx being released in 1989 and featuring significantly more powerful hardware than Nintendo's Game Boy. Unfortunately, the high cost, bulky design, and small library meant that it wasn't really able to compete against Nintendo's offering. The Lynx was claimed to have been a success at the time, but various interviews in recent years have led people to believe that the Lynx sales numbers were frequently inflated by Atari compared to the true rate of sales. The issues continued with the next planned release, codenamed Panther. This was supposed to be a 32-bit console, intended to compete directly with the Super Nintendo. However, in the lead up to the projected 1991 release date, a serious internal conflict arose within Atari. Development of the Panther had started in 1988, with the development of the 64-bit Jaguar also starting in the same year. The idea was to release the Panther in 1991 to compete with the existing 16-bit consoles, like the Super Nintendo. Then release the 64-bit Jaguar 2 years later to blow the competition out of the water and usher in the next generation of consoles under the leadership of Atari. The problem was that the Jaguar's development was progressing faster than expected and would likely leave little time for the Panther to make its mark. It also meant that the company was split catering for both systems, spreading development and manufacturing teams quite thin. The Jaguar hardware was significantly more powerful than the planned capabilities of the Panther, which would mean that the Panther would have become obsolete very quickly if Atari had stuck to its original roadmap. In the end, the decision was made to scrap the Panther entirely and pour everything into the Jaguar. This included asking for some of the games in development for the Panther, like Cybermorph and Trevor McFur, to be reprogrammed for the Jaguar. The Jaguar was released in 1993 as planned, but with a host of issues that prevented it from ever catching on in the way that Atari had hoped. It can certainly be argued that the decision for Atari to abandon the Panther was a mistake, since it allowed both Nintendo and Sega to dominate the generation with their 16-bit consoles. There simply wasn't room for Atari to muscle their way back in, especially since they'd already been out of the public eye for so long. In addition, the hardware was buggy and difficult to program for, making it a struggle for developers to actually use all that additional power. Atari's Jungle Cat plan had potential, but suffered from poor timing between releases and indecisiveness on behalf of Atari management. It's a shame, since it was essentially the nail in the coffin for Atari's hardware division. End of an era for sure. But hey, we'll always have Tempest 2000.